You know that feeling, don't you? When someone who used to be a part of your daily rhythm just starts to fade. Their messages get shorter. The calls come less often. Their energy changes, but they never explain why. They don't leave. They just slowly step back. And you feel it in your gut long before you admit it to yourself. So you start spiraling a little, checking your phone more than usual, reading their last text 3 times, asking yourself if you did something wrong. This is the moment when most people panic, when they start overcompensating, when they try too hard, text too much, apologize unnecessarily, over-explain, beg for attention that once came freely. But I'm going to tell you something you weren't taught. The worst thing you can do when someone starts pulling away is chase them. Because the moment you start chasing, you're saying, without saying it, you have power over how I feel. You're handing them the remote control to your nervous system, and they can feel it. Even if you play it cool, even if you act like it's just checking in, they can feel the energy behind your words. And people pull away faster from what feels needy, especially when they're not sure they ever wanted to stay. But let's be fair, you're not crazy, you're not weak, you're human. Of course it hurts when someone you care about begins to detach. Of course your mind starts racing for answers. Because being ignored, being faded out without explanation, it activates every old wound you've ever tried to forget. That childhood version of you who was left out. That teenage version who loved too hard and lost too quickly. That adult version who's trying to pretend like this doesn't hurt. We all carry that ache. And our first instinct is to fix it, to patch the hole, to make sure we're not the problem. To beg, softly or loudly, please don't disappear on me. But what if I told you their distance isn't your fault and your reaction isn't your healing? Here's the thing nobody teaches you. Sometimes when people sense that you're finally valuing yourself more, they don't rise to meet you. They retreat. They liked you better when you were always available, when you didn't ask questions, when you didn't have boundaries, when you were easy to reach, easy to predict, easy to hold on to, without ever earning you. And now that you're shifting even just a little, they pull away. Not because you're wrong, but because they don't know what to do with someone who's finally waking up. So when someone begins to go quiet, your first move should never be chasing. It should be stillness. Not because you're playing games, but because you're paying attention. Because chasing them, energetically or literally, will cost you your peace. And nothing is worth that. Now let's get real. What does chasing actually look like? It's not just blowing up their phone or begging them to talk. Sometimes it's more subtle. Overthinking everything you say, trying to sound more likable, posting stories or quotes just to get their attention, checking when they were last online, wondering, should I act like I'm unbothered? Should I send a meme? Should I wait another day? This is mental chasing, and it's exhausting. Worse, it never works. Because the moment someone senses that you're seeking their validation more than your own grounding, they know they can take you for granted. So here's your new practice. Let them pull away. And don't move. Don't shrink. Don't chase. Don't fill the silence with desperate noise. Just go still. Still enough to hear yourself again. Still enough to ask the real questions. Why do I need them to affirm me right now? What version of me feels threatened by their silence? What does it say about me if I don't chase and they never come back? Because the truth is, if someone disappears when you stop performing for them, they were never seeing you in the first place. This is where strength is born, not in arguments, not in long texts, not in proving your worth to someone who can't see it. It's born in the moment you sit with the ache and refuse to let it make you desperate. Because the version of you that needs to be chosen to feel valuable, that version is tired. Tired of performing, tired of chasing, tired of tying your worth to someone's inconsistent attention. Let that version go. Let her or him rest. And I know this isn't easy. The silence feels unbearable at times. You want answers, you want closure, you want to understand, but sometimes closure doesn't come in words. It comes in reclaiming yourself. It comes in the quiet decision to stop needing people who can leave without a word. It comes when you realize their silence says everything you were afraid to accept. So what now? You breathe, you go still, you come back to yourself. You don't lash out, you don't call them names in your head, you don't craft revenge scenarios or dream of them begging to come back. You simply let the dust settle without kicking it up again. Because if someone doesn't value your presence, you owe it to yourself to learn the beauty of your absence. Let them go. If their energy shifted, believe it. If their words grew cold, trust it. If their absence is louder than their presence, stop turning down your volume to hear their silence. You are not too much. You are not the problem. You are not invisible. You are just learning how to stop giving love to people who confuse attention with affection and effort with obligation. This is the moment you learn to sit in the quiet without reaching for the noise that used to keep you company. This is the moment you begin the journey, not of winning them back, but of finding the version of you who no longer needs them. So you didn't chase, you didn't text, you didn't explain, you didn't show up in their DMs hoping they'd finally notice your worth. You went quiet, not out of bitterness, but out of respect for yourself. And now something unexpected is happening. The silence that once terrified you, it's starting to feel like peace, not because the pain is gone, but because you're no longer feeding it. That ache in your chest still whispers at night, but now you know it's just a signal, not a command. This is the season of becoming, of going inward, of turning all that noise, all that overthinking, all that grief into stillness and strength. You've exited the arena of reaction. Now you've entered the realm of rebuilding, quietly, patiently, deliberately. And that's when things start to shift. Let's talk about energy, because when someone pulls away and you don't chase, you're not just protecting your pride, you're resetting your frequency. Before, you were operating in a state of emotional reactivity, checking your phone, trying to win them back, making yourself smaller just to fit into whatever space they offered. But now you're choosing alignment over attention. Now you're choosing to pour into yourself first. And when your energy changes, your entire reality changes with it. You start to build differently. You move your body not to impress them, but to feel grounded in your own skin. You eat better, sleep deeper, breathe more slowly. Not because you're trying to glow up for someone else, but because you're finally tending to the home you live in. You read books that expand your mind. You take long walks without needing a destination. You journal through the storm, and somewhere between the lines, you start to remember yourself. Not the version of you they liked, not the version you performed to be accepted, but you, the real one. This is where power is built, not in public declarations, not in revenge posts, not in trying to prove a point, but in quiet consistency, in doing the boring work, in showing up for yourself every single day when no one's watching. They don't see it, and that's the point, because becoming untouchable doesn't mean you become hard. It means you become clean. Clean from needing people who were never consistent. Clean from proving yourself to those who never understood you. Clean from chasing love that asked you to lose your dignity to receive it. Let's talk about mystery, because you're starting to radiate something new, and they'll feel it. You don't post like you used to. You don't reach out. You don't explain yourself to people who never earned access to your inner world. There's no drama, no story, just distance and peace, and that's unsettling to them. Because when you stop performing, you stop being predictable. And when you stop being predictable, you become powerful. Here's something they don't expect: that your silence wasn't you giving up. It was you leveling up. They thought you'd wait. They thought you'd linger. They thought you'd orbit around their absence like a planet around the sun. But now you've become your own source of gravity. You're not chasing, you're attracting. You're not hoping, you're healing. You're not watching them anymore. You're watching yourself evolve. This is also where you begin to filter differently. You no longer let just anyone into your space. You no longer confuse attention with affection. You no longer romanticize people who only showed up when it was convenient for them. You've raised your standards quietly, and now the ones who once had easy access to you start to feel like strangers. Not because you hate them, but because you've outgrown the version of yourself who needed them. Let me be clear, being untouchable isn't about being emotionless. It's not about pretending you don't care. It's not about becoming cold or unapproachable. It's about becoming unshakable. You can feel everything, but you no longer act from emotion. You can miss someone and still not let them back in. You can love deeply, but only if it aligns with your peace. That's the real discipline. And now you start noticing things. You stop comparing yourself to others. You stop wondering what they're doing, who they're with, what they're posting. Because truthfully, you no longer need to know. Your mind is quieter. Your heart is lighter. Your soul is focused. They're not on your pedestal anymore. You are, not in a narcissistic way, but in a grounded, humble, finally awake kind of way. You no longer need closure because you've given it to yourself, not with a final conversation, not with a mutual understanding, but with an internal decision. They no longer have access to this version of me. And that decision, that's your breakthrough. Now you begin to move in silence, but with purpose. You start to become the version of you that your younger self needed, the one who doesn't beg, the one who doesn't chase, the one who doesn't lose sleep over being misunderstood. You don't force anything. You flow. You trust your intuition more. You hold your boundaries without explanation. And suddenly, the world feels different, not because it changed, but because you did. So if you're in the middle of this process right now, healing in private, rebuilding in silence, wondering if it's worth it, let me tell you, it is. The ones who left won't recognize this version of you. They'll remember who you were when you needed them, but they'll never truly know the one you became when they disappeared. That version, that's the one that can't be touched, not because no one wants to, but because you finally stopped reaching. There's a quiet kind of power that no one talks about. It doesn't make a scene. It doesn't chase closure. It doesn't scream, "Look how much I've changed." It just walks back into the world, centered, clear, unapologetically grounded. And that's where you are now. After all the silence, the rebuilding, the nights you didn't think you'd make it, you did. You're not the same. You don't feel the same. And most importantly, you don't react the same. You've reclaimed something most people never do: your emotional independence. You no longer rely on someone else's presence to feel whole. You no longer let someone else's absence define your identity. You don't flinch when the message doesn't come. You don't spiral when they forget your birthday. You don't get hooked on crumbs of attention like you used to. Because now, you've remembered who you are. And that remembrance is everything. Here's the thing they didn't expect: that you'd move on without them. That you'd rise, not in rebellion, but in silence. That you'd stop checking, stop hoping, stop orbiting their world like your light depended on their gravity. They thought your silence was weakness. They thought your absence was temporary. They thought you'd come back the moment they opened the door, but when they finally turned around, you were already gone. Not in anger, not in spite, just gone. There's a beauty in becoming unreachable, not because you're running, but because you've outgrown the places where you once begged to belong. You've changed frequencies. You've risen above the noise. You're not bitter, you're just better. And when they try to come back, and many do, you won't need to slam the door. You'll simply keep walking because you no longer live at the address they left you at. Let's talk about what happens when they realize what they lost, because they will. Maybe they see a photo of you smiling, and it's real. Maybe they hear your name in a conversation and feel something sharp twist in their gut. Maybe they finally get the space they asked for and discover it's cold and hollow. That's when it hits, that you weren't asking for too much. They were just given too little. And now you don't even need the apology, because the apology isn't what heals you anymore. You did that without it. You start seeing the past differently now. Not through the lens of pain, but through the lens of perspective. You recognize the red flags you once painted white. You see how many times you gave chances when you should have walked. You feel compassion for your old self, but you don't want to be them again. You don't miss the highs and lows. You don't crave the unpredictability. You don't want the half-love you once romanticized. You've come too far. Here's the moment of truth. You don't want them back. Not really. You miss the idea of being wanted. You miss the comfort of familiarity. You miss who you were when they looked at you like you mattered. But the version of them that existed in your mind was never fully real. And the version of you who clung to that fantasy no longer exists either. You've buried both. And from that burial, something new was born. Someone new, you, and now you walk differently. You speak with fewer words. You look people in the eye with calm, not hunger. You move with a grace that doesn't need to prove itself. They'll see it, maybe from afar. And they'll wonder how you became so composed, so self-possessed, so untouchable. But they won't understand that your glow came from the fire they left you in. And by the time they figure it out, you'll be living a life so full, so aligned, so peaceful. There will be no space left for their confusion. That's the true return of power, not revenge. Not pettiness, not making them jealous, but indifference, rooted in self-respect. That moment when you realize, I didn't need to win them back. I just needed to stop losing myself for them. That's the shift, and once it happens, there's no going back. You don't reach out, you don't explain, you don't ask for clarity, because you've already given it to yourself. This version of you isn't desperate. This version of you isn't waiting, isn't hoping, isn't aching for someone else to see your value. This version of you knows that real love doesn't leave you guessing, knows that true connection doesn't require begging, knows that your peace is too sacred to gamble on temporary attention. So you guard it, not with walls, but with wisdom, not with coldness, but with clarity, not with pride, but with presence. And here's what's beautiful. You don't hate them. You don't wish them harm. You simply accept what is. They made a choice, you made one too, and now you're both living with the consequences. But only one of you found freedom. Only one of you turned silence into strength. Only one of you turned distance into direction. And that person, that's you. So let them miss you. Let them scroll your feed and wonder. Let them think about what could have been. Let them feel the space you used to fill. But don't go back. Don't shrink for comfort. Don't dim for connection. Don't abandon yourself just to be seen again. Because now you know the real return isn't them crawling back. It's you, never needing them to. That's the kind of freedom no one can take from you, not even the ones who left.